and we are going to switch gears for a little while and talk about something that's going on regarding labor in Louisiana. The American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees have some representatives who have just arrived at our studio, and good afternoon to you. And since we're doing this on the fly, I need your names.
Sure, I'm John Losney. I work for AFSCME, the union you just mentioned.
That's John Losney.
Yep.
And you're the strategic analyst who wrote a study that we are going to discuss. And labor unions, as we know, have not been as formidable as they once were, but your organization, you believe, certainly remains viable. Why?
Well, absolutely. I think, we are standing up for the rights of workers and for public services in Louisiana. And the state that this study that we just issued, which you can access, we can explain where to access it later, but we're making the point, 2 points really. Louisiana has already seen too many cuts in public services and that are provided by state government. And Shantae, who's here with me, can talk about that.
Okay, and Shantae, what is your last name?
My name is Shantae Gibbs, and I'm with Louisiana Workforce Commission Quality Control, as well as the president of the local union 421.
Okay, and the cuts that John referenced have had an effect in all facets of Louisiana life. We hear about how it's affected higher education and health care, but you're of the mind that it's affected working people as well. How so?
Yes, the cuts are actually causing more frustration, not only just for the employee, but also for the public. We are not able to provide the vital services needed that the public has wanted and how it deserved to have.
Well, your white paper discusses the state's need for services and the consequences that would follow from their elimination. Now, John, you say over the past decade the state has slashed spending by more than $4 billion and eliminated the jobs of 28,000 public employees. Now, some people are probably applauding those numbers. Why has that not been a good thing?
Well, I think when you hear members of the legislature, for instance, at the Capitol, saying that we have to make more cuts in state government, they're really just not dealing with reality. We have, our paper mentions, for instance, the mental health facility up in Pinecrest, where it's so badly understaffed that workers are being assaulted by patients every day, and obviously this is bad for the patients too. And actually, Shantae, who works at the Workforce Commission, can also talk about what she sees at the Workforce Commission as an example.
What's going on there?
Well, because of the years of trying to make everything electronic, we've taken out people in the local offices, so we're not able to actually supply the services needed for those individuals who are not inclined to electronics. So with them removing human beings from the local offices, it's keeping the public from being able to get the services. Not being able to talk to a person is really vital to someone who has no skills for it, where we're trying to take everything to. So it's important, and we're not giving that service anymore because because of the cuts, we're losing more of the public service.
Now, John, you believe the money is available if the state would reconfigure its tax situation. The governor has tried to do that without much success. What needs to be done in your estimation?
Well, we think that, and we demonstrate, I believe, that Louisiana can't afford to adequately fund public services. It's really just a matter of finding the political will. And so the members of the legislature need to change the state's unfair tax system so that the wealthy and the corporations would be paying their fair share in this state to support the public services that benefit everyone. One thing that we demonstrate in the paper is that corporate America makes a lot of money in Louisiana. And it's just that a lot of the money isn't actually going to benefit the people in Louisiana. We hear members of the legislature or the business lobby up in the Capitol there talking about sometimes, like, if we expected corporate America to pay their fair share, that maybe they'd pick up stakes and leave Louisiana. Well, that's really not true. I mean, they're making a lot of money here.
You note that since 2007, a decade ago, Louisiana has provided over $17 billion in tax incentives and other subsidies to large corporations, and you say that's second only to New York?
That is correct.
And New York is a much bigger state.
It has about, I think, 4 times the population of Louisiana, I believe.
Yeah, so $17 billion is a big number for any state, but especially in a small state like Louisiana. And in 2015, according to the AFSCME white paper, Louisiana corporations received 5 times more in tax breaks, $1.4 billion, and they actually paid in taxes, $250 million. That figure sounds staggering.
That's correct, and it's straight up from news reports and reports of straight from the state budget as well. That information's all out there, and we sort of just pulled it together.
All right, we'll talk more about the tax structure in Louisiana from John Lasney of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and Shantae Gibbs, who's with the Louisiana Workforce Commission. Your number is 877-217-5757, and we return in a few minutes on the Louisiana Radio Network.
In the wake of last August's devastating floods, Livingston Parish schools are facing an uphill battle. We'll talk with Superintendent Rick Wenzel about it on the next edition of the Clarence
Strategic
Bug
Analyst
Show.
for the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees in Louisiana. Here in Baton Rouge, he's working with the group AFSCME, and also with that organization is Shantae Gibbs, who is also affiliated with the Louisiana Workforce Commission, has been for many years. Your number, 877-217-5757. And some numbers that this group is presenting are certainly striking. Since 2007, Louisiana, according to the report, has provided over $17 billion in tax incentives to large corporations, second only in the country to the state of New York. And that coincides mainly with the Jindal years. And the previous governor, as we know, was a great advocate of providing subsidies and tax incentives to business. 877-217-5757. And as we stated, some people think that's a good thing, but if you think it was not, or maybe we gave a bit too much, we'd like to hear from you. Mark and Zachary. Good afternoon, Mark. You're on the Jim Engster Show with John and Shantae. Hi, Mark.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. I got a quick question for you, John. So I understand that you subscribe to the notion that we should increase the tax base for the corporations in Louisiana in order to get more revenue for these types of programs that you're speaking about. I just want to ask the question, what do you think happens when you tax a company more than what they're normally projecting to be taxed for the year? Well, I can tell you that their profits are going to go down. When companies have profits, they typically invest in capital investments, upgrades to their facility, improvements, state-of-the-art equipment, those types of things. But when you tax companies like that, also what you see is that they begin to cut benefits to their people. They lay off people, and that has a direct impact to the economy. I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that, because it certainly is the other side of the coin, which I know I've been exposed to in my career. Thank you.
Well, it's a good question because, and we actually talk about this somewhat in this paper, we demonstrate that if you were to add up all the capital investment, all the wages they pay, and all the taxes they pay in Louisiana that corporate America puts together in Louisiana, it's still less than what they're taking out of the state in terms of profits. And that benefits mostly shareholders in other places, New York or what have you. So it's almost like, say, a developing country. This is often the pattern you see in other poorer countries. That's going on with Louisiana, in terms of what corporations are actually taking out of the state. So increasing their taxes somewhat to fund the services that benefit everybody in the state is really not asking too much. And in fact, they're making so much money here that they always sort of take a sky is falling attitude anytime anyone talks about raising revenue to fund services. But in fact, they can definitely afford it. They're making a lot of money here. They're not just going to leave.
You also note that our state, Louisiana, has a tax system that you say is regressive, that families earning less than $50,000 a year pay more than twice as much of a percentage of their income in state and local taxes as those earning over $500,000.
That's correct, and so even the money that stays in the state, the taxes are unfair for the people who do live in the state. So if your income, think about your family income, if it's under $51,000 a year, which is true for 60% of the people here, you typically pay about 10 cents on the dollar in state and local taxes in Louisiana. But if your income is over $470,000 a year, that would put you in the top 1%, then you typically pay about 4 cents on the dollar in state and local taxes. So it's a very unfair tax system in the state.
People hate taxes. Politicians hate them because they feel their viability is often affected by how they vote on taxes. And as a result, I think many state workers are also demonized as though they're part of the problem, that there's this government bloat that needs to be addressed and that taxes are being used for them rather than us. How do you get past that mentality? Shante?
Well, I like what the caller said about the companies being able to upgrade. But doesn't the state of Louisiana need to be able to upgrade as well? We're constantly downgrading because they're cutting all the public services. We wake up in the morning using public service. We go to sleep with public service. Mm-hmm. And the more we cut, the less there is. It's not changing, it's not changing the fact that we still have a job to do, but we're being made to do more with less. Why shouldn't the bigger companies that are also being promised to bring jobs into our state pay taxes? If they're using the same public services that are being afforded to the state as the constituents here, then the only fair thing to do would to allow them to be able to pay their share too.
We'll be back and spend a few more minutes with John Losney and Shante Gibbs, and we'll talk with them and you, and take a call or two when we return after this time out on the Louisiana Radio Network. This is Jim Engster. We're rounding the corner and heading for home this hour, and Dan in Baton Rouge has been waiting patiently. Dan, please be brief. You're on the air.
Yes. Would it help in the effort to get corporate Louisiana to pay its fair share in taxes by researching and exposing the lifestyles of the top management and their lobbyists so that the legislators would be shamed in this, quitting just looking out for their corporate paymasters?
Quickly.
Doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. I like it.
All right, Jake in Baton Rouge. Thank you, Dan. Jake, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jim. Thanks. What we're talking about right now, this has happened in other places. Look at Puerto Rico in 2005, 2006. They ended the tax credits for the pharmaceutical companies over there. Fast forward to 2008, they go into a massive recession. The entire populace, the island, almost 40% of the people that were on there were employed by these tax credits and tax cuts. They basically lost their jobs within 2 years.
All right. Tax incentives sometimes stimulate business. Jake has concerns.
Well, Jake, I would say the whole world economy collapsed in 2007 and 2008. I don't think that it had anything to do, in Puerto Rico collapsing had anything to do with them taking away money from corporations. But.
Well, thanks for calling, Jake, and we've got an hour to go, and we'll be talking about other things, including the simmering dispute over monuments in Louisiana, which has absolutely nothing to do, really, with people's quality of life, but people are engaged and want to talk about it. Stay tuned.